This is pretty much every time I sit down to record at this point. But yeah, anyways, if rude. If I randomly move the camera at any point, somebody's trying to get on the keyboard. But anyways, what are we talking about today? Well, we are talking about the Pokemon International Championships for North America, or in other words, NAIC 2025. Woo! This just went by this previous weekend here, and man, what a way to wrap up the last little bit of the 2025 season before Worlds. NAIC was wild, despite this being the North American Championships. Not a single American player made it into the top 8, and I find that hilarious. More or less just because of the sheer irony behind it. And now I'm pretty certain everyone who's talked about this tournament has brought up that at some point or another, and I'm definitely no exception. I am definitely following suit there. But anyways, NAIC, the last major event before Worlds. How are people going to adapt going into Worlds, and what are some standout things involved with what we saw as far as Pokemon Go for usage? And as far as our day one restricted pairings go, we had Calyrex Ice Rider Miraidon, Shadow Rider Zamazenta, Shadow Rider Corodon, and Miraidon Lunala in day one. And then in day two, we pretty much see it for the most part the same, with the exception of Miraidon and Zamazenta switching out with Miraidon and Lunala. And I just want to bring up the percentages on these pairings here. For day one, we had an 18.3 usage rate for the highest pairing of that Ice Rider and Miraidon, with the lowest being 6.9 between Lunala and Miraidon. And there was 1,100 players in this tournament, so that's a lot of Ice Rider, that's a lot of Miraidon, a lot of Zamazenta, and a lot of Corodon and Shadow Rider. Now, in day two, the Ice Rider Miraidon ratio does go up to 21%. The Shadow Rider Zamazenta percent goes up from 11 to 20.4. Corodon and Shadow Rider go up from 10.2 to 12.3, and Zamazenta and Miraidon hit 8%, whereas Miraidon and Lunala were at 6.9. And then as far as our non-restricted Pokemon go, for day one here, our top 12 Pokemon here, we had Incineroar, Urshifu Rapid Strike, Rillaboom, Amoonguss, Grimmsnarl, Iron Hands, Chien-Pao, Raging Bolt, Chi-Yu, Volcarona, Whimsicott, and Farigiraf. And then in day two, what we saw Chien-Pao actually jumping up in usage, actually passing Urshifu Rapid Strike by quite a bit. We ended up seeing it go from 17.8% usage on day one all the way up to 29.6% for day two. And some interesting Pokemon that do stand out is the fact that in day one, Fluttermane didn't crack the top 12, but it did in the second day, and Smeargle ended up bypassing Farigiraf. And we also saw a notable usage in Grimmsnarl drop off. In day one, it had a 21% usage, and it's nowhere even in the graphic for day two. And Whimsicott actually got to go up a little bit in day two as well compared to its day one showing. We saw it jump from 12.9% to 18.5%. So that's pretty respectable. And Amoonguss is an interesting Pokemon too, because in day one, it's in the top 4 percentage at 21.3%. And in day two, it's in the top 3 at 28.4%. And the fascinating thing about that is the fact that Miraidon exists. It naturally sets electric terrain, and electric terrain makes it so that you can't fall asleep when you're grounded, which means despite there being so many Miraidon, Amoonguss had a very good showing as far as representation goes. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised for Urshifu Rapid Strike, because Miraidon is a scary thing for this Pokemon. Let's be honest. Miraidon, Raging Bolt, they're both scary Pokemon for Urshifu, but the ability to have the multi-striking guaranteed critical hit in Surging Strikes is pretty nice, especially whereas we do see that Grimmsnarl on day one. Grimmsnarl is notorious for setting up Reflect and Light Screen, so being able to bypass the Reflect with the guaranteed Surging Strikes critical hit is nice. And honestly, although it didn't make the graphics for restricted pairs, Kyogre probably had a pretty decent time paired with Urshifu, maybe even Miraidon and Iron Hands. So I thought it would be kind of cool to dive into Labmouse and talk about some of the different Pokemon that did show up, some of the Pokemon that didn't necessarily place the highest, and just kind of spitball from there. Now, there were over 1,100 players in this tournament, and this is mostly just looking at Masters data alone. This isn't even factoring in the juniors and seniors division, so there is definitely a lot of Pokemon here. And what kind of a VGC event would it be if Incineroar was not right there at the top? And honestly, the answer to that question is a format Incineroar is not allowed in, but otherwise, Incineroar is just so darn good, and obviously, it takes the #1 usage slot total. And this list is also throwing in restricteds and non-restricteds together. So Incineroar had a grand total of 522 appearances, and that's a pretty considerable jump between it and Miraidon, which comes in at #2 at 474. Now, Miraidon obviously is an extraordinarily powerful restricted legendary Pokemon, and I'm not surprised to see it that high. Now, what I am kind of surprised to see, though, is the fact that Shadow Rider at #3 had 362 appearances, while Ice Rider had 325 at 4. And keep in mind, the #2, 3, and 4 slots are all restricted legendary Pokemon here. We have Incineroar, which is a starter from the Sun and Moon games, and then we have Urshifu Rapid Strike at #5 as the second highest non-restricted in terms of appearances. So good for you, Urshifu. Good for you with your guaranteed critical hit move and your ability to break through Protect. Good for you losing to Incineroar in terms of usage. But that said, I think this is a really cool thing that Labmouse has, because not only can we go over the actual teams for the players that made top cut, but we also have the whole list of Pokemon, or at least I'm fairly certain this is the whole list. It's a very long list, and I'm not going to go through the entire thing, but what I am going to do is I am going to scroll down a little bit here. So after Urshifu, we got Rillaboom, we got Amoonguss, we got Grimmsnarl, we have Zamazenta, Iron Hands, Raging Bolt, Chien-Pao, and the nice thing that I'm kind of seeing here too is outside of Amoonguss with the redirection, like, we see some Pokemon that do get access to Fake Out in Rillaboom, Grimmsnarl, and Iron Hands. We also see some Pokemon that tend to be fairly bulky and pretty decent support as well, especially in the case of Amoonguss with Rage Powder and Regenerator synergy right there. Like, Amoonguss can redirect away attacks, and if it survives, it can switch out, give it some more HP back from Regenerator. And then if Electric Terrain isn't on the field, it's got Spore. Meanwhile, Rillaboom, if its own terrain is up, it's got the Grassy Glide, and Grassy Glide will also be powered up by Grassy Terrain's ability to increase the power of grounded grass type attacks. So there's that. Woodhammer off of Rillaboom is going to be nice. Any grass type attacks off of any of the 4 different Ogerpons that made it to the tournament, they would also get boosted as well. We have defensive support in Grimmsnarl with the screens. We could potentially see Parting Shot. We can potentially see Sucker Punch, Fake Out. A lot of different usage right there. And let's just click on Grimmsnarl for a quick second here. Let's see right here. So the biggest item used was the Light Clay at 224. And then we got 10 Covert Cloaks, 3 Ability Shields. So that's one way of getting around Wheezing. But interestingly, Fist Plate. Interesting. Okay. Now, I'm not 100% sure why Fist Plate might be there, and there was only the one, but I'm wondering maybe because Grimsnarl does get tricked. Maybe the idea was trick the Fist Plate onto something that doesn't want to have an item boosting up fighting type attacks, or maybe getting really clever. Maybe it's a way of sneaking in extra damage for Corodon and basically side trick your own fist plate onto the Corodon and then get a 20% boost to collision course or close combat potentially. I don't really know if that would be viable, but I'm trying to come up with a reason. But yeah, anyways, getting back into this, like just Grimmsnarl, Spirit Break, Reflect, Light Screen, really standard stuff. Thunderwave is great speed control. Parting Shot gives you that pivoting utility, and it's also a guaranteed attack and special attack drop. And because of Prankster, it's coming very, very fast. Foul Play can turn something's own attack against it, which honestly, that's great into Ice Rider, seeing as Ice Rider has such a high attack stat to begin with, and it's even great into Shadow Rider and Lunala because they're both 4 times weak to Dark type Pokemon. So, yeah. Now, obviously, that's fairly basic Grimmsnarl stuff, but I think it's worth noting, like, for some of the stuff here. And then if we look into what Corodon was running, because Corodon being a pretty big hitter itself, like Corodon was running Flare Blitz and Flame Charge, which is fairly standard and, synergizes great with its own Orichalcum Pulse setting the sun, and Corodon likes to naturally run Terra Fire a lot of the time, so it makes sense. Get some speed into Corodon, have that fast Flare Blitz, just delete something when you still have the sun on the field. Collision Course and Close Combat are great stab options. And the nice thing here too is, like, while Collision Course does get a bonus modifier when it's a super effective hit, Close Combat is just a higher base power at 120. And then you get Breaking Swipe for a little bit of attack support, like attack debuffing support, so that's nice. And when you look at what was paired with Corodon, like we see Calyrex Shadow Rider, and I wouldn't be surprised if we did see Wheezing, since the ability shield is pretty high up there on the usage rating with a 35% usage. And so then that way too, Corodon still gets to set its own sun. It still gets to boost up its own fire type attacks. And if it's on the field and there's no water type Pokemon, or rather if there is water type Pokemon that can't potentially threaten it with a super effective attack, like, it can stay not non-terrestrialized and keep that water type resistance from the dragon typing. So naturally, Corodon can take water type attacks really nice. And then if something comes on the field like a fairy type, well, then it can pop the Terra Fire, and then it can just go for big damage, especially if it's already removed a water type Pokemon like Kyogre off of the field. Now, we see Chi-Yu, and Chi-Yu is an excellent partner for Corodon and Shadow Rider, seeing as Beads of Ruin naturally lowers the special defense of everything on the field, so Shadow Rider's Astral Barrage hurts all the more, and Corodon sets the sun for Chi-Yu, so Heat Waves and Overheats are going to do a lot more damage. Brute Bonnet benefits from Protosynthesis, so a attack booster Protosynthesis Sucker Punch can be worthwhile, and plus Brute Bonnet is basically that offensive option to Amoonguss that can similarly play to Amoonguss with Rage Powder and Spore support, so there's that. Incineroar just loves that sun to begin with, and the Intimidate support, don't even get me started on what else Incineroar loves to do, but Incineroar naturally likes that. And then Raging Bolt, similar to what I just said about Brute Bonnet Sucker Punch, getting Protosynthesis boosted, Thunderclap, special attack booster, Protosynthesis, that hurts a lot. And plus, that's a really good way of punishing electric type Pokemon as well. You have Raging Bolt on the field, maybe you switch in Corodon, maybe your opponent already burned their Terra and Kyogre can't terrestrialize. Like, Kyogre wouldn't love that boosted Thunderclap either, so there is that. So yeah, Corodon, yeah, I could definitely see some of the stuff. And also, when we look at it too, 197 out of the 200 Corodon were Terra Fire, so back to what I was saying, it likes to run Terra Fire. Absolutely, it likes to run Terra Fire. Out of 200 Corodon, 197 of them were Terra Fire, with 2 of them being Terra Fighting and 1 being Terra Steel. Now, the Terra Steel is kind of interesting because the Terra Steel gives it a fairy resistance while not making it weak to water, but it does make it weak to ground like fire, so high horsepower can still be a little bit scary. But yeah, you're not becoming weak to Surging Strikes either by going Terra Steel 2. You are becoming weak to close combat, so Rapid Strike might be a little bit scary for Corodon in that form, but I can see what my one person was trying to cook with. I can see what they were trying to cook. So yeah, now Corodon made number 13, and Kyogre, that's pretty good segue. Kyogre was number 14. We got Lunala at 15, Chi-Yu at 16, Volcarona at 17. And Volcarona, it's a fun Pokemon because you can always have like that struggle bug support to guarantee a special attack drop into your opponent, and it's a spread move, so you don't have to worry about redirection like Rage Powder or Follow Me. Fiery Dance can be great, seeing as it can boost up Volcarona's own special attack. Quiver Dance can be an offensive option for Volcarona to get that speed and that special defense and special attack boost, especially if you have a boosting item like, say, an Electric Seed to give Volcarona a physical defense boost. So like that could be really spicy, and honestly, 20 Electric Seeds, they were there. Rocky Helmet's another good one too, especially if you have a Terra that's resistant to water. You can suck in a Surging Strikes and just basically have an Urshifu just delete half of its own HP. So, you know, that could be fun. And if you're running Flame Body, well, then you also have the chance of burning it. So, like, you're basically, like, Rapid Strike's a worst nightmare when you're terastallized into a water-resistant typing. Flamethrower is an interesting option because it is a little bit of higher base power than Fiery Dance. But, yeah. Tailwind is a good one. Tailwind is definitely good speed control. And let's see what else. Interestingly, Throat Spray. Okay, so yeah, I can see the synergy between that and Bug Buzz as well to give Volcarona a special attack boost, and then Volcarona can just hit all the harder. And Volcarona does get Giga Drain too, so like Volcarona could basically get back some HP, and if it's really bulky, that could be really, really annoying for people. So like, yeah, I really like that Volcarona tech option right there. We see Farigiraf at number 19, which is great, seeing as it is a great means of shutting down priority. We see Fluttermane at 20, Landorus at 21. We get I'm pretty sure this is the first Ogerpon I've seen at 22, Tornadus at 23, Brute Bonnet at 24. Terapagos is notable for 25. Like, Terapagos has that ability to clear the weather and the terrain when it terastallizes into its terrestrial form, and typically we do see Terra Starstorm, Earth Power, Calm Mind, and Protect on most sets. But interestingly, here we have Dark Pulse to punish Lunala, seeing as a Calm Mind Lunala, once set up, could be really difficult for most Pokemon to crack through, so having that 4 times super effective damage to crack through that on a non-terastallized Lunala makes sense. Flamethrower is a fairly interesting coverage option. Dazzling Gleam. Hyper Beam just deletes stuff coming off of choice specs, so there's that. Rock Polish is really spicy and really cool, since that is a means of increasing Terapagos' own speed, and it's a nice alternative for a boosting move on Terapagos, because whereas you typically see Calm Mind, if you have, like, say, maybe Rock Polish and then a Life Orb on Terapagos, like, Terapagos could get fast, and then when it terastallizes, it gains special attack points too, so it can get fast and then go for massive damage, and that's kind of a really nice innovative tech in my opinion, seeing as you don't typically see Terapagos moving very fast without Tailwind help, so like having the Rock Polish to boost up your speed can be really solid, so there is that. And then we have Power Gem for rock type coverage as well, in case people didn't want to run the Meteor Beam. And Ice Beam is interesting too, because it can hit Corodon, which would threaten Terapagos with fighting type attacks for super effective damage. It can also threaten Miraidon as well, so there is that. As far as some Pokemon we've seen with Terapagos, we've seen Shadow Rider, we've seen Rillaboom, Rapid Strike, and Incin. So fairly standard stuff. Miraidon's another one. And just to make a note, Electric Seed Terapagos, that could be really spicy, especially if you had, like, say, the Electric Seed for the defense boost, Calm Mind for the special attack and special defense, and then maybe even a Rock Polish, Terra Starstorm, and a single target attack to get around Wide Guard. Like, that could be wild. Like, that could be really wild. And maybe even then, too, like, you might not necessarily have to run Protect. Maybe you have, like, a Rage Powder Bond in the back or something like that. Like, get Miraidon on the field, set up Terapagos' Electric Seed, Volt Switch, bring in, like, a Redirection Mon, and go from there. Like, that could be incredible. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want to try something like that. Ogerpon Cornerstone and Smeargle, like, both of those could be excellent redirection, especially since Smeargle can have Spore support, and Smeargle can basically have whatever you want. So maybe Smeargle even has Decorate too. So, like, I've seen from looking around, like, Decorate seems to be popping up on Smeargle again. So, like, Smeargle decorating Terapagos and then Terapagos even getting speed, that could be really scary too. Honestly, like, yeah, like, maybe you're running, like, Decorate, Spore, Follow Me, Smeargle next to Rock Polish, Terra Starstorm, Earth Power, or Dark Pulse, Terapagos, and then just have maybe Protect and a third move, or maybe even just having two damaging moves, Protect and Rock Polish. Like, that can be pretty scary when you think about it. Now, let's talk about some other Pokemon here. Move on from Terapagos. Ursaluna, the Hisuian form, comes in at number 26, which is a massive powerhouse. We got Zacian at 27, Indeedee at 28, Galarian Wheezing at 29. So there's your neutralizing gas and the sole reason why you should be running the ability shield on your Corodon or any other Pokemon you don't want to see get in, like, you don't want to see some trouble there. I'm trying to think of the word that I wanted to use, but anyways, it's kind of escaping my mind here. But basically, you don't want to see your Pokemon hit a wall when a Weezing, whether it be your own or your opponent's, just come on and shut off the abilities, because a lot of Pokemon really love their abilities. So, yeah. We got another Ogerpon form at 31 for Hearthflame. We got Iron Treads coming in at 32. Walking Wake is very interesting right here. So let's just take a quick look here. Like, we have Hydro Steam, Draco, Meteor, Snarl, and Aqua Jet. We got Flamethrower. So Flamethrower and Hydro Steam would definitely synergize with Corodon setting the sun. And I'm wondering if anyone ran Groudon. Oh, yeah, there we go. 9.26% Groudon paired with Walking Wake. So, yeah, that makes sense, seeing as Groudon is another restricted that can set the sun outside of Corodon. Assault Vest is kind of interesting because this is a fairly glassy Pokemon. But, I mean, hey, if you're not worried about Sucker Punch, or you have, like, Farigiraf or another anti-priority mon, like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, having 4 attacking moves, especially with Snarl, to be able to get a defense or a special attack drop into your opponents, and then that way you're getting a little bit more manageable on the specially defensive side by having Snarl lower the special attack stat. So there is that, especially with a speed booster energy photosynthesis. Like, Walking Wake outspeeding a lot of things and hitting them with Snarl can be relatively handy, especially if you have, like, say, maybe a Choice Scarf on Corodon, or dare I say it, even Groudon. Like, you imagine you get the Snarl off to a Miraidon, and then a Choice Scarf user just immediately goes after it and just does so much damage. And maybe it might just outright knock it out. I don't know. But, yeah. That's kind of where I'm going with this for Walking Awake. And we're going to move on before I start getting all over the place. I mean, I already have, but yeah. Anyways. We have Groudon coming in at 35 and Urshifu Single Strike at 34, which it's nice to see Single Strike coming out, because dark coverage, I feel like, is really, really necessary for cracking through a lot of the Psychic type Pokemon in the format. So the guaranteed crit is really nice, especially, like I did say, with being able to bypass the Reflect off of Grimmsnarl. That could be handy. And the other thing to keep in mind about Single Strike that does give it an edge is, while it doesn't break Focus Sashes with Wicked Blow, if you do accidentally hit into a Rocky Helmet Mon, well, it's in the name. single strike. You're only hitting once. Sure, you might break your own focus sash, but at least you're not taking half of your own HP with your go-to super move on this Wushu Bear. I think that's the word. Yeah, I think that's the martial arts word for Urshifu, but yeah. Yeah, I'm going to have to look that up later. But anyways, point is, Wicked Blow isn't going to be so devastating if you do accidentally hit into a Rocky Helmet Mon. It will be a little bit more forgiving. We have Ogerpon at 36, Iron Jugulus at 42, Annihilate at 38, which honestly, Scarf Annihilate with a means of blocking priority, Final Gambit, yes. Annihilate has a really good HP stat, and it can actually take out a lot of restricted legendary Pokemon with Final Gambit at the cost of itself. So, like, that's a fair trade. Like, imagine, like, I'm pretty sure Calyrex Ice Rider is base 100 HP and Annihilate is 110. So, like, imagine losing access to Glacial Lance because Annihilate came in and just Final Gambited you. Like, now, obviously, if you see an Annihilate, you should probably be protecting your Ice Rider and trying to at least chip down the HP. But if you protect your Calyrex, like, you're fine there. But if you don't protect your Calyrex and your opponent's Annihilate comes in Final Gambit's, like, and you lose access to Glacial Lance, like, that could be really bad for you. So, like, yeah. We got Ho-Oh and Roaring Moon at 39 and 40. We got Torkoal at 41. Iron Bundle at 42. We got Pelipper showing up at 43, which is nice to see because, you know, water-type Pokemon like Kyogre, they kind of, or I should say Kyogre specifically, it kind of overshadows Pelipper because it's a restricted mon that's also a Drizzle setter, and it's more offensively geared than Pelipper, but it is nice to see Pelipper showing up, whereas it does have access to Wide Guard support as well as Tailwind. And then my boy, my wonderful little gremlin, Sneasler, at 42 right here. We got Fake Out, which Sneasler is a Fake Out mon. We got Close Combat. We got Dire Claw. We got Acid Spray, which honestly, that's some interesting tech to go next to Miraidon because Unburden Electric Seed will turn on Sneasler's speed. Sneasler's base 120 speed mon. So it's outspeeding a lot of things at that +2 speed. And say your opponent's got a Flutter Mane on the field, something that could potentially threaten Miraidon with a boost energy speed boost. If Sneasler comes in, hits the Flutter Mane with an Acid Spray, breaks a potential sash, or even, like I said, if it was even just a booster energy, like, and get that chip damage, like, Miraidon's gonna just punish that thing, like, send it straight to the graveyard there with a Volt Switch, maybe, or even Electro Drift, or, dare I say it, Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam. Like, a -2 special defense Flutter Mane would definitely not appreciate a Hadron Engine boosted Miraidon, especially after Sneasler's already done a little bit chip damage to it. Toxic Spikes is an interesting option because, like, your opponents, unless they're playing to gut strategies, they probably don't want to be poisoned. So there is that. And then Throat Chop and Gunk Shot. And honestly, Gunk Shot makes a lot of sense because Dire Claw, the main thing about it is it's a roulette between putting something to sleep as well as poisoning or causing paralysis. Now, if your opponent's playing electric type Pokemon on the field and electric train is already up, whether it be your own Miraidon or an opposing one, well, you lose access to putting your opponent to sleep because of the electric train. And if it's an electric type Pokemon, like say an opposing Miraidon, well, now you can't paralyze it either, which honestly, poisoning a Miraidon is probably favorable for your opponent actually, because they're not potentially missing a turn and taking a speed drop from paralysis, or they're not guaranteed to lose one turn from sleep because of electric train. So, like, Gunk Shot's a great alternative, albeit accuracy is not quite as high, but it does have more base power than Dire Claw. So you're basically trading the RNG roulette for the will I hit it or will I not hit it RNG. And if you do hit it, well, you're probably going to do some pretty decent damage, because Sneasler's got a respectable attack stat as well. So there is that. Now, interestingly enough, someone did run a Grassy Seed, so That means someone went in there with Rillaboom and Sneasler, and that must have been the hard, like, let's try to get rid of Miraidon idea. Have the grassy terrain from Rillaboom just override electric terrain, and then just Dire Claw. So, like, that might have been an idea that I could definitely see. And we do see some partners with it being Miraidon itself, Calyrex Ice Rider, Incineroar, Ting Lu, Dondozo, Tatsugiri, Ditto, Tornadus, Kyogre. Like, that's a lot of partner options right there. And I could definitely see how a lot of those would definitely work right there for Sneasler. Now, we see Ting-Lu at 45, which Ting-Lu lowering everything's special attack with Vessel of Ruin. That's nice. We have Clefairy with Friend Guard, which is kind of nice to see that Clefairy is still coming to these super packed events with restricted legendary Pokemon. Iron Valiant's a great wide guard and coaching option, as well as even an Encore machine, so there is that. Dondozo and Tatsugiri at 48 and 49. Ditto comes in at 50, which honestly, if you play your Ditto right and get it lined up, like, you can copy your opponent's restricted mon or even a really good support mon, and you can just have fun right there. Like, even just being able to, like, say, like, steal a Rillaboom or an Iron Hands with Ditto, like, that could be nice. Or, you know, just have a Miraidon of your own and then copy your opponent's Miraidon. Yeah, that could be scary. Or, you know, a Calyrex Ice Rider, especially whereas Glacial Lance has such low PP to begin with. Ditto's transformation nerf to all of the moves usage, like, that doesn't really matter too much at the end of the day, even if you copy an Urshifu Single Strike when you think about it, because typically you see Wicked Blow, Sucker Punch, and Close Combat, none of which have much PP. Like, they max out at like 8, and I'm fairly certain Transform doesn't copy PP up, so like it would go down to 5. So yeah, you're not really losing out on a lot of moves right there. Like, you didn't have many to begin with, and you can still take advantage of them. So yeah, Ditto copying an Urshifu Single Strike could actually be kind of scary. And then we're just going to name off a few more. We got Sinistcha at 51, Blood Moon Ursaluna at 52, Jumpluff at 53, Basculegion at 54, Teal Mask Ogerpon, which I'm pretty sure this is the fourth of 4 Ogerpons right here at 55. We got Dragonite at 56, Zarina at 57, and then finally Giratina at 58. And honestly, the Giratina and the Rhydon are the two things that I wanted to get down to as far as the list went, and Sneasler, but I knew Sneasler was going to be on the way. But anyways, Giratina Origin showed up at 58, and Murkrow and Rhydon were at 59 and 60. And honestly, Rhydon too, like, considering Portland Regional with Michael Zhang piloting Rhydon with, I think it was Portland. I'm blanking on which regional it was, but anyways, Rhydon being piloted by Michael Zhang with Lightning Rod right there, like, I'm pretty happy to see Rhydon still showing up and having some fun with that Lightning Rod ability for dealing with Miraidon. And Giratina Origin, I'm curious about that one there. Like, it doesn't have a big percentage usage right here, being at 0.71%, but I mean, at this point, it is a restricted legendary Pokemon. Like, you're looking at like the likes of Miraidon, Corodon, the 2 Calyrexes, all of these Pokemon that are going to be competing for a team slot, which are only allowed 2 of. Like, I can see why Giratina might not necessarily be the go-to pick for everybody, especially the Origin form, since it can't even hold an item outside of the Grisius core. But what we do see as far as moves go, we see Shadow Sneak and Poltergeist. Pretty dangerous ghost type attacks when you think about it, because you get priority Shadow Sneak, and Poltergeist just does a lot of damage to something if your opponent still has their item intact. And then we got Draco Meteor for special dragon type damage and Dragon Claw. We even have Shadow Force, which that gives you like a semi-protect right there by disappearing on the first turn. And Will-O-Wisp is a nice supportive option, but I feel like that's a little bit better on the altered form, whereas the altered form has the higher defenses than the origin form. But hey, I respect the typing. Now, Terrafire is great because Terrafire Origin Giratina does have Levitate, so it hard walls Ice Rider. And honestly, going back to when I used it for a video in Rank G, combined Giratina with Terra, Fire, and Levitate is really scary because it can easily set up on Ice Rider, and then that way too, it can just go for some massive damage with boosted Shadow Ball or even Dragon Pulse. So there is that. So yeah, just wanted to give that a little bit of a shout out. But yeah, anyways, I think down, there's Kieran White, by the way, because it jumped the list to 68. But I was going to say, I'm fairly certain even Reshiram came in around 80. And honestly, that's a pretty good Pokemon as well when you think about it, because it benefits from the fact that it's got a really good special attack stat, and it can be paired with either Corodon and Groudon, which would naturally set the sun. So, like, a choice item could make it really scary, or even an Assault Vest. So, yeah, there's my Reshiram shout out there. Now, we've talked a lot about different Pokemon on the list here, and I think it's probably a safe time to take a look at some of the actual teams and players, mostly their teams though, that placed within the top 32. And honestly, we're not going to go into every single team, but I thought it would be kind of fun to switch over to that as well. Before we get into this, I do want to point out that while there wasn't a single North America player in the top 8 of NAIC, there was a fair amount of them in the top 32 and top 50 standings as far as the list goes. We had quite a few American players starting all the way at rank 9, and we even had the odd Canadian sprinkled in. So, like, yeah, like, look, number 9, 10, and 11. 3 American players back to back. And the reason why I point this out is sometimes you scroll through social media and you see people talking about placement for tournaments and track records for the way how results went, whether it be players themselves or even just fans commenting on the situation. But you got to remember, there was 1,129 people at this tournament. That's a lot of people in one venue playing Pokemon over the course of a weekend. You're going to face a lot higher quality and caliber of competition at a regional, much less an international championship. Now, it is kind of unfortunate, and I did laugh that despite it being NAIC, that not a single North American player made top 8, you still got to give them a pat on the back for where they placed. Like, a lot of players did really good work when everything comes and the dust settles. Now, it is a little bit unfortunate that with the way how it works out with the top 75 people for each region going on to Worlds, like, it might be a little bit disheartening, and it's very easy on the player end of things to get disheartened by your track record. Like, my very first regional was Vancouver 2024, and I had flown all the way across the country to compete in my first ever regional. Like, Vancouver is extremely far. Like, it literally is the other way across the other side of the country for me. And I unfortunately only placed 3 and 6. Now, is it a good track record? Not really. But when you think about it, you're coming in, you're facing a lot higher quality players than you might not necessarily expect to see if you're in your local area. Now, if you're from a huge area, then maybe, yeah. But the point is, there's a huge jump in scale of competition. Now, for me, there's no real local scene for VGC, but there is a local Pokemon Go competitive scene. And it's not exactly a 1-to-1 ratio, but when you face people in your local area, especially when you come from a small location like me, you might get a little bit more comfortable in terms of the skill level, whereas larger locations, larger venues, especially larger tournaments like regionals, they draw in a much higher quality of player. And that's not to say that locals don't, but what I'm trying to get at is there's a lot of people there. There's a lot of high skill, all condensed and packed into one area. And really, unless you're just throwing like Cosmog and a bunch of other random garbage on a team as a joke and going to a regional or a international championship, if you're coming in with the intent of playing seriously and trying to win, it's not the worst case scenario if you do end up placing not as high as you would necessarily want to. Like, sure, it is disappointing, but the fact that you showed up, you competed, you hopefully gained knowledge from competing, and then therefore can grow as a player, that's still great at the end of the day. And the reason why I'm just trying to say this is more or less, I find it kind of rubs me personally the wrong way a little bit when you see people actively hating on players and using their results to try to judge them for their opinions on stuff in regards to the game. And yeah, that's kind of the main thing. Now, I think all players that did compete and did their best, I think they deserve a pat on the back. Like, I really do think they deserve that at the end of the day. And now, rant aside, let's actually talk about the winning teams, the winning team, because there's only one winning team for the tournament. But let's talk about the winning team, and let's talk about the top eight, and then some other notable stuff. But we're gonna start off with Federico Camporesi, which I feel like I said wrong. I am so sorry if I did say that wrong. But let's start off with the winning team and then work our way down to the top eight, and then talk about some Pokemon that I thought were kind of notable on some other teams that did kind of rank it pretty high in this tournament. And to be completely honest, I took notes, and I would rather not just have stock footage of me just looking down at my camera, holding a piece of paper in hand. Yes, I actually printed them too. Just looking down. So I'm actually going to move the face cam off, and we're going to talk about the actual team, and I don't have to worry about whatever faces I'm making while I'm trying to read as well. So face cam out. Okay, that looks much better. I'm not gonna lie. It was kind of bugging me too that corner where the team composition, it was kind of bugging me that was being blocked by my face as well. But anyways, Federico had a team that consisted of Lunala, Miraidon, Ursaluna, Incineroar, Whimsicott, and Urshifu. And an interesting thing here about this team is the Ursaluna, or rather the Urshifu, is Choice Bandit. The Miraidon is Choice Spext. And even the Incineroar is Assault Vested. So there's 3 Pokemon that can't naturally use Protect. I mean, you don't really see Protect on Incineroar to begin with. But I think that really shows how aggressive this team is, because 3 out of 6 Pokemon automatically can't Protect just based off of their items alone. And then we have Lunala with that very important Wide Guard on it to protect the team from spread moves. We have a naturally bulky Pokemon right there that can set Trick Room for the Ursaluna. But if Federico had needed it, well, there's both the speed and the Trick Room mode, because we do have Tailwind Whimsicott. So really, Whimsicott Tailwind is great. It naturally turns on the speed mode, and depending on how the Ursaluna is built, like, you can have a fast or slow mode with Trick Room or Tailwind. And the really good thing about the Assault Vested Incineroar is, while it doesn't have the pivoting option for Parting Shot, it still has it through U-Turn, which means Incineroar has a nice slow U-Turn right there. It can pivot out potentially as Lunala is setting up Trick Room. Ursaluna can come in, get the Flame Orb, and it can just go from there. And to be completely honest, I didn't actually get a chance to watch the stream. Ironically enough, I'm probably going to go watch it after I'm finished filming this, but yeah, the big thing here is the Incineroar does have the ability to help pivot into the Ursaluna. The Trick Room is able to be set up, and it should just be a overall smooth sailing time if Urshifu is on the field with Tailwind as well, with the banded Surging Strikes. And I also do like the Terra Ghost on the Urshifu, since it does get around Fake Out that way. So there is that. The Ursaluna also has the Terra Ghost. Lunala is naturally a Ghost type, so Fake Out shouldn't be much of a problem for this team in general. The Whimsicott has a Covert Cloak. Really, Miraidon and Incineroar are the only 2 things that necessarily have to worry about Fake Out, which I think is a really smooth piece for the team being built in. And honestly, out of the 2 losses that Federico's team had, they were only rounds 4 and 7. So that's pretty impressive when you think about it. Like, the final round was 17. So these were 2 losses on literally just day 1. Like, round 4, day 1, the first loss was Terapagos and Shadow Rider, and round 7, which I almost called day 7. Oh god, you imagine 7 days straight of a tournament. Round 7 was Calyrex Ice Rider and Miraidon, and both of these players that did end up securing a win against Frederico ended up placing fairly decently. We're just going to turn on the search, and we're going to take a quick look. So Santino ended up finishing with a record of 8 and 4, which is pretty good at 89, and Darsh Patel ended up finishing at 78. So you know what? Still pretty decent. Actually, both players had an 8 and 4 finish, which is pretty decent when you think about it. Like, they played the ultimate champion for this tournament and actually sneaked out a win against the future champion. Before, like, nobody else beat Federico during this tournament. So I think that's a really big accomplishment for them right there. Now, what else do I have for notes here? Actually, that's all the notes for Federico. Let's move on to our runner-up and our second place team right here. So we got Marco Silva, who had Zamazenta, Calyrex Shadow Rider, Rillaboom, Ogerpon Heartflame, Raging Bolt, and Incineroar. And it's a good thing to point out about all the adaptations on Federico's team to avoid Fake Out, because there's 2 Fake Out setters on Marco's team here. And Fake Out, like, having the Fake Out on both the Incineroar and the Rillaboom, definitely nice for disrupting the opponents, especially whereas you can pivot both Pokemon out and you can go from there. And the really awesome thing too is Ogerpon can also take advantage of the grassy terrain from Rillaboom. Like, Ogerpon has the grassy glide tech right there. It's also the Heartflame form, so if it terastallizes, it gets an attack boost, and it can take advantage of the grassy terrain in addition to not only overriding any opposing terrain, but now it has a priority grass type, stab grass type attack that also is now benefiting from a straight up attack boost thanks to Embody Aspect for the Heartflame mask. So, like, Ogerpon can take advantage of that right there, and it's a nice little additional reason to have that grassy terrain on the team, aside from just having the terrain wars with Miraidon and Indeedee. So that's a really nice piece of tech. Now, the Incineroar is, interestingly enough, Terra Water, which, with all the Miraidon in the tournament, like, I would be a little bit concerned about having a Electric Weak Terra, but the Incineroar and even the Zamazenta both have the Terra Water. But the nice thing about Incineroar is it does resist the Fire type Flare Blitz attacks and Fire type Ivy Cudgels from Heartflames, but it's kind of a nice means of being able to resist one of the stab typings for opposing Incineroar. There's also the Rocky Helmet as well, so if an Urshifu does try to go for Surging Strikes, well, Rocky Helmet's just going to make sure that Incineroar just whittles down that HP. And then we also have a Helping Hand on Incineroar as well, so it can boost up its partner's attacks. So that's really, really nice, because Zamazenta, like, even with just the +1 defense from Dauntless Shield, like, Body Press is doing a lot. You boost that up with Helping Hand, well, now that's really going to be doing a lot of damage there too. And let's also make a note of the Shadow Rider on this team. It's a nasty plot set with Life Orb, so having Incineroar and Rillaboom both have the option for Fake Out is great, because then that helps Calyrex potentially get off a nasty plot and set up, and then therefore it doesn't have to worry about necessarily chipping down opponents. It can just immediately fire at a respectable power output with that Life Orb boost as well. So the Astral Barrage and Psychic are just going to do a lot of damage. And really, even if the attacks are resisted, that Calyrex is probably going to be doing a lot of damage to a non-Assault Vested Pokemon at this point. And then we also have the Raging Bolt as well. And again, because Miraidon is so prevalent, Raging Bolt can take advantage of that electric terrain if Rillaboom doesn't come to a game, since the electric terrain will also power up Raging Bolts, Thunderbolt, and Thunderclap as well. And Thunderclap on Raging Bolt is awesome when there's no anti-priority, whether it be Psychic Terrain, Armortail, or Queenly Majesty on the field too. So like Thunderclap can punish a lot of things right there. And it's booster energy Raging Bolt at that. So you better believe that it's getting a special attack boosting photosynthesis at that point. And as far as Marco's matches go, like his only losses outside of the finals was in round 8 and round 12. And we'll just pull this up as well too. So in round 8, the loss was down to Calyrex and Zamazenta as well. And an interesting take here is the difference is, although it's the same restricted pairing, we have Chien-Pao and Amoonguss here, as opposed to the Ogerpon and even the Incineroar. So now there's that Amoonguss with redirection and Spore support, which there's no electric terrain on Marco's team, so it does make sense that Spore could be nasty. And Chien-Pao is there instead of Incineroar, so that ice damage and dark damage could be very threatening to Rillaboom, Raging Bolt, and Shadow Rider as well. So like Chien-Pao looks really nice on paper there. And then in round 12, we had Terapagos and Miraidon right there. And yes, I'm 99% certain that's also Electric Seed Terapagos right there, with Miraidon having Snarl. So bulky Terapagos is definitely not a fun thing to have to deal with. So like really, I think it's pretty notable with the two teams that both defeated Marco and Federico there. Like they had some pretty good tech on their teams. Now, let's move on to our 3rd and 4th place. So in 3rd place, we had Kazuki Kobayashi, and in 4th place, we had Eric Rios. And for our 3rd place team here, we had Ice Rider, Landorus Incarnate, Urshifu Rapid Strike, Farigiraf, Miraidon, and Incineroar. And our 4th place team has Chien-Pao, Miraidon, Vcarona, Teal Mask Ogerpon, Zamazenta, and Rillaboom. Now, let's talk about Kazuki's team first. So, this Ice Rider is the Leech Seed set. The very, very annoying set that is probably the bane of my existence. It's Leech Seed Ice Rider, which is naturally a bulky Pokemon to begin with. It's got Trick Room, it's got Leftovers, it's got Glacial Lance. Now, the one thing that's kind of working against the Calyrex is its only damaging move is Glacial Lance, so Wide Guard can block it, but this thing is so bulky, it could just start stalling with the Leech Seed recovery and with protect shenanigans right there. And then the nice compliment, though, is the Miraidon is spexed, so it can just punch holes through teams that Calyrex might not necessarily be doing in this particular case. We got the Electric Seed on the Farigiraf. We've got Scarf Urshifu with Terra Water, so that Surging Strikes is going to hurt all the more. And we also have Sandsear Storm for a spread ground option on Landorus alongside Earth Power and Sludge Bomb and that Life Orb Sheer Force set right there. So that's a very scary team. And we also have another Assault Vested Incineroar right here with the U-Turn, Flare Blitz, and Knockoff option right here. So Incineroar is kind of scary there. And fascinating, too, that it's Terra Bug, which, honestly, I think that's pretty cool. And maybe it's just because of the Wolf's Incineroar that was just recently distributed. The Terra Bug is fascinating because it resists fighting and ground attacks. So really, Incineroar might have a better time against some more popular ground-type attackers with that Bug Terra, which, I mean, we've seen Terra Bug on our Chaladon in Regulation H as well. So, like, yeah, I can see the Terra Bug, and I can get behind that. And yeah, that's kind of what I mainly want to talk about with this particular team. And then moving on to our next point right here with Eric Rios' team, we've got Scarfed Miraidon with Snarl. So Miraidon is reliably getting off that special attack debuff with the Snarl, which is going to help Zamazenta in the long run. since it means special attacks are not going to be doing as much damage to it. We have a Quiver Dance set on the Vcarona with an Electric Seed. So now Vcarona has a means of raising both of its defenses. Well, one time with the physical defense, but Quiver Dance can raise the special defense more than once. There's Fiery Dance to raise its special attack, and Giga Drain for HP recovery. And then it's also Terra Grass, so it's going to resist water type attacks, which is nice. And this is more of an offensive set for Vcarona as opposed to the bulky Rage Powder set. So, like, seeing offensive special attacking Vcarona go is always fun. It's how I used to always play it. And, you know, speaking of Pokemon that I about seeing them as offensive options, we're kind of taking the reverse with the Ogerpon here, because Ogerpon only has one damaging move, and that's Ivy Cudgel, and its natural ability is Defiant, but this is the one Ogerpon that can actually hold items, so it's nice to see the Covert Cloak there to get around Fake Out, since otherwise you have to rely on Spiky Shield to get around Fake Outs, or, you know, anti-priority abilities. But the Ogerpon is just really, really anti-status at this point. It's got Taunt to stop Pokemon from using status moves, and then it's got Encore to make them use the same moves over and over again. So, like, that's a very interesting tech on the Ogerpon right here. And I kind of wonder why Taunt and Encore both, like, it would almost kind of make sense to maybe see like a secondary damaging move, since the Defiant is great counterplay to Incineroar, like maybe whereas Ogerpon does get access to Low Kick and Superpower, like Ivy Cudgel would be a grass type in this form, so like fighting coverage might be nice, and then that way too, you can hit fire and steel Pokemon. You'd be hitting fire types for neutral damage, but you'd be able to hit steel types for super effective right there, which steel would naturally resist grass, and even just having a neutral matchup into other grass type attacks with Low Kick would have been interesting. But I do really think it's good tech right there for the Ogerpon with access to the Encore and the Taunt. It's just the combination that I'm a little bit second guessing. Now with Zamazenta, we do have Behemoth Bash instead of Heavy Slam right there, which, you know, I can kind of see that because it would do probably a little bit more damage to Ice Rider when it's not terastallized, because Ice Rider is a pretty heavy Pokemon, so Heavy Slam is based off of Zamazenta's weight, so I can definitely see the Behemoth Bash option that way instead, and then you don't have to worry about potentially losing out on your damage output. And other restricted legendary Pokemon do tend to be fairly on the heavier side as well, so yeah, I can definitely see the Behemoth Bash there. And then we also have the Crunch on Chien-Pao, which I want to make note of as well. And the reason there that we have the Crunch to mention is if Chien-Pao doesn't pick up the knockout, but it does pick out, or rather, it does get a defense drop into the opponent, well, then it's basically a shoo-in to finish them off the next turn with the combination of Crunch's defense drop and Sword of Ruin active, so there is that. Now, that was kind of the big points that I had for the top 4. Let's move on to the rest of the top 8. So coming in at number 5, we had Franchesco Popper with Miraidon and Terapagos alongside Sinistcha, Iron Treads, Urshifu Rapid Strike, and Incineroar. And this was an Electric Seed Terapagos with the Calm Mind option alongside an Assault Vested Snarl Miraidon. So you know there's not a whole lot of special attacks doing much damage to Terapagos. And the nice thing here is Sinistcha can come in and heal up Terapagos with the Hospitality ability. And then as far as the Iron Treads goes on the team here, Iron Treads is fascinating since it can basically come in and you massive damage with a choice banded steel roller. And then that way too, if there's a Rillaboom on the field and Terapagos already blew away the field conditions by terastallizing, well, Iron Treads can come in here and just do it all over again and take advantage of the fact that it has the steel roller for great stab damage. And I'm also just noticing too, it also had Ice Spinner there too. So basically there's no terrain that is safe from this Iron Treads. Like Steel Roller fails if the terrain is already like removed, but Ice Spinner does not. And then there's Iron Head if the Iron Treads needs to lock in for consecutive steel damage, and then it has high horsepower. And honestly, the Terra Bug is pretty cool on that Iron Treads as well. And yeah, that's kind of the big thing that I wanted to point out about Franchesco's team right here is we have that super bulky Terapagos option with the Calm Mind Electric Seed. We have the Miraidon with the Assault Vest, so the Miraidon's even taking less damage from stuff, and then it has the Snarl to lower things as well. Moving on to number 6, we've got Yuma Kinugawa with Smeargle coming in here with Decorate, which that is terrifying because if Smeargle decorates the Calyrex, the Rillaboom, or the Raging Bolt, all of them are doing massive damage from a +2 boost from Decorate, whether it be +2 Woodhammer on the attack side for Rillaboom or +2 not Electro Whip, Thunderclap with Raging Bolt, or +2 Astral Barrage with Shadow Rider. Now, the one nice thing here, though, too, is the Smeargle can't really benefit Body Press off of Zamazenta since that does use the defense stat. So that is kind of the one saving grace. Like, if that Smeargle came in and coached the Zamazenta, then it's game over. But yeah, the Shadow Rider is definitely a scary thing to get boosted from Decorate as well. So there is that. And then with Yuma's team as well, there is also the Spore support on the Smeargle, and there's Follow Me redirection. So really, outside of Fake Out, like Smeargle isn't doing any damage. But if Smeargle's getting that assist with Decorate, that is terrifying. And if Smeargle doesn't get the Decorate off or is worried about Follow Me, well, Calyrex can just Nasty Plot anyways and say, I'll still boost myself and do it Thanos style and just obliterate something with a Nasty Plot boosted Psychic or Astral Barrage at that point. So, yeah. Yeah, Smeargle's terrifying. And then moving on to 7, we have Ruben Gianzini. Again, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. We've got another Zamazenta Calyrex Shadow Rider. This time, instead of Smeargle and Torn, we have Amoonguss and Chien-Pao. So we still have that Spore support with the Amoonguss, but now we're adding some offensive coverage here with the Chien-Pao. So Sword of Ruin can definitely make Rillaboom's attacks and Zamazenta's attacks hit a lot harder as well. So there's that nice immediate Sword of Ruin drop. And then we're moving on to number 8 with Gabriel Agati. And honestly, this might be the team that I'm probably the most biased towards because there's a Screamtail on there. And Screamtail is one of my favorite Paradox mons. And it's a on-court disable Screamtail as well. So you know it's going to be fun when this Terra Dark Screamtail terastallizes and can't be prankster taunted by stuff. So there is that. Or it can't even be prankstered in general with the Terra Dark. But yeah, Screamtail can do that. We have Corodon with the offensive physical damage. We have Shadow Rider with the fast special damage. We even have the Fluttermane and the Ogerpon as well. So there's a lot going on right there. And with Gabriel's team here, we have some fairly standard stuff with Corodon. We got the Terrafire Flare Blitz, we got the Flame Charge, we've got Collision Course and a Clear Amulet. Then with Fluttermane here, we do have some speed control with the Icy Wind, but notably too, we do have Taunt and Terra Stellar, so its 2 stab options will get a one-time double stab boost right there. So Moonblast and Shadow Ball can hit really hard, and on top of that, they don't have to worry about wide guard blocking them, and Taunt can just stop potential wide guard users for the Shadow Rider. Now, an interesting thing about the Shadow Rider here is it's a Shadow Rider with substitute in Leech Seed and Astral Barrage. Now, you do run the potential problem of the PP stalling on Astral Barrage, but I mean, if Calyrex comes in and picks up a KO pretty quick, like it's getting that special attack boost, and if it gets behind a sub, well, the sub is going to help it a little bit as well, and the Leech Seed will probably put it back within range to get another substitute back up, and we just go from there. And we can also see Terra Fairy, Assault Vested Incineroar helping stall things by shutting them down with Fake Out. Calyrex gets a substitute, and they just rinse and repeat. So yeah, really cool team. I really do quite like this team. Let's talk about some Pokemon that we did see pop up from 9th place and onward that didn't quite, or rather, well, some of them probably did appear in the top 8, now that I'm thinking about it, but some other Pokemon that kind of stood out a little bit after on teams that didn't make it into the top 8. Yeah, that's a better way of phrasing that. So at number 9 here, we see Urshifu Single Strike. We also see another Iron Treads. And the fun thing with this Iron Treads here is this one is a Life Orb set instead of a Choice Band, unlike the first one we did see. And now we have the option to choose between Steel Roller, High Horsepower, and Iron Head. So if the terrain needs to be destroyed, like, Iron Treads can do it. And if there's opposing Miraidon, well, nothing wrong with Iron Treads taking advantage of that Cork Drive to potentially get a speed boost and then just destroy the electric terrain to just shut off the power from the opposing Miraidon. Or they just go for a straight High Horsepower, but if it's Terra Fairy Miraidon, well, they don't want a Terra Fairy in front of the Iron Treads because it can just Steel Roller and do even more damage. Now it's a super effective hit, so they might stay regular base and then just eat a High Horsepower at the end of the day. So, like, Iron Treads feels like a great means of dealing with Miraidon, and I think I needed to start playing some more Iron Treads myself. Then we also have another Leech Seed, Glacial Lance, Calyrex, but this time Terra Fairy with Never Melt Ice. So just going for the extra damage on that Glacial Lance and just not really caring too much about the Intimidate potential because the Calyrex could just set the Leech Seed and then switch out and eventually pop into the next slot. And then we also have the Amoonguss with Spore support. We got Pollen Puff, Rage Powder. And then we get into Urshifu Single Strike with Terra Stellar, Wicked Blow, and Close Combat, both of which can't be protected. And then there's the Sucker Punch priority, which would also benefit from that one-time Dark Boost if Wicked Blow isn't already taking it. So, like, that's a very scary Pokemon to see, especially a Focus-Sashed Urshifu Single Strike right there. So, like, really, this thing is just coming in and just handing out some massive damage. So, there's that. Now, in 11th place, with Carson Confer, we see Sneasler with the combination of Acid Spray and Dire Claw next to a Miraidon. So that's just a wild, like, Electric Seed, Sneasler, Unburden, Acid Spray, just soften something up immediately. Miraidon just blasts it Kingdom Come with an electric type or even just whatever coverage move it wants to go for. Like, yeah, that's gross. And then Ditto can just come in and just copy whatever it wants. So there's that. We have screen support with Grimmsnarl. We have Ice Rider. And then at 13th place, we have another Terapagos Miraidon team with Sinistcha, which honestly, it just looks great. It really does look great. So yeah, like Sinistcha can heal up that Terapagos, like I mentioned earlier, with the Hospitality. And then, yeah, Terapagos just gets bulky, gets set up, and then that gets really scary too. Like, thinking about Terapagos, like, if it doesn't Terra right away, well, Terra Shell, if it gets reset, like, that can make it, like, really take hits fairly good. And it might even, like, a +1 defense Terapagos, depending on how it's EV'd with Terra Shell, that might help it take a super effective fighting type attack. So, like, really, that could be really good tech right there. Especially, too, with the Iron Treads, like, it can come in, break terrain, and then you don't necessarily have to commit to blowing your Terra to get rid of terrain as well. So, like, you can always just hold that for later. So there is that. And then we have a little ways down, we have Nick Navarra running Kyogre and Basculegion, and this Kyogre has 3 water type attacks. So that is a interesting option right here because we do have the spread option in both Origin Pulse and Water Spout, but then Hydro Pump can just get around Wide Guard and go for massive damage. And plus the Mystic Water in this particular case makes a lot of sense since it's a guaranteed 20% boost to water type attacks, and you don't have to worry about something like, say, a Life Orb whittling down your HP, which honestly the Mystic Water just complements Water Spout really good. We have Swift Swim Basculegion with the Last Respects Wave Crash and Aquajet combination with that Life Orb that Kyogre is not opting to hold. So there's that. Fluttermane has the Icy Wind speed control. So that's great to begin with. We got a Moongus with Pollen Puff to potentially heal up Kyogre, or even, further heal up Calyrex with that Leech Seed. God, I'm terrified of running into more of these on the ladder now that that's popping up. And then we got the Iron Jugulus as well with Snarl and Booster Energy and Tailwind. So like it can turn on the speed for things. It can just lower special attacks right there. And it even has Hurricane because you know what? Who needs accuracy checks when you got Rain and Hurricane together? So really, Nick Navarro had a really cool team as well. And then let's see. And then like going further down, like trying to find some, we got Ting Lu as well coming up fairly consistently within the top 50-ish slots as well. Like Ting Lu can make its partners bulkier on the especially defensive side with Vessel of Ruin kicking in. So that's pretty spicy right there. Like Ting Lu does pop up in a few different spots within the top 50. And then even when we get further down, like towards the top 100, we do start seeing some interesting legendaries pop up towards the end of it. And we're just going to quickly, hopefully, scroll further down because we have a Giratina origin that was piloted by Henry Rich with an 8-4 showing, and there's also Kyogre there, so like Giratina, mixed Giratina at that with Draco Meteor, Poltergeist, and Shadow Snake. Like I am fascinated by that, especially since there's Chen Pao there to be able to lower the defensive stuff, and then Kyogre can come in on the special side and go for big damage too. And then a little bit further down, like we also have Jeremy Boyd with Groudon and Ice Rider right there. So like it's nice to see Groudon popping up. I would have liked to see Groudon pop up a little bit higher, but an interesting thing to note too is it's Terra Water Groudon, which normally you see maybe Terra Fire or Terra Grass Groudon. So I find the Terra Water Groudon really cool, and it did have an 8-4 showing. So that's a pretty respectable placement right there for that Groudon. Now, overall, I think if you're curious, you should definitely check out Labmouse and see more of the Pokemon that were used. And this video has definitely gone on more than long enough, but you could still find plenty of stuff to talk about just from NAIC alone, not to mention any other previous tournaments. And it's going to be quite interesting to see how people adapt going forward, since this was pretty much the last major regional competitive. I don't know how to phrase it because it's in IC, but anyways, it's one of the last major tournaments before Worlds, so it will be interesting to see how people adapt to the data shown from these results and how they tend to go from there. So what I'm trying to get out of me is I am fascinated to see what happens. I am excited for Worlds. I'm pretty hyped. I hope you're hyped as well. There was definitely quite a bit of different Pokemon on a lot of different teams, and while we did have a lot of fairly recurring restricted pairings, the other 4 Pokemon on the team slots, they definitely vary quite a bit, and I think we are in for a very, very exciting World Championships later this summer. So let me know what you thought of NAIC. Let me know what you thought of some of the points I made. If there's some things I didn't mention, be sure to let me know those down in the comments, especially anything that might have stood out to you. And yeah, I did mention it earlier too. I didn't actually get a chance to actually officially watch the stream, so I'm probably going to sit down and start watching through matches there and see if I missed anything, and who knows? Maybe I might learn something that I completely got wrong while covering some of the stuff in this video as well. But yeah, anyways, I've rambled on more than long enough at this point. I will see you guys next time.